Trump signaled for security the moment Jasmine Crockett stepped into the room. But before they could even reach her, she spoke. Just 60 seconds. And everything changed. This wasn't supposed to be a moment that made history. It was just another political event. Another overhyped summit full of pre-approved soundbites and flashy rhetoric. The Lone Star Leadership Forum, hosted at the K. Bailey Hutchison Convention Center in Dallas, had been on the calendar for weeks. Everyone expected the usual. Press coverage, partisan applause, and Trump delivering a fiery speech. Business as usual. But before we dive into this story, I want to hear from you. Comment down below. Where in the world are you watching from? Let's light up this comment section. And hey, if you love stories with high drama, power shifts, and the kind of moments that leave people speechless, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button right now. Go back. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next chapter in these powerful, untold stories. The air was electric, but familiar. Campaign aides rushed through the lobby in tailored suits, their press passes swinging wildly as they passed security checkpoints. Vendors lined the halls with MAGA hats, red, white, and blue t-shirts, and even a gold-plated Trump bobblehead. It was a rally dressed as a leadership summit, and everyone knew it. Inside the ballroom, seats vanished fast. Some attendees gave up and hugged the walls, phones in hand, already live-streaming. The crowd was more mixed by generation than ideology. Retired oil executives sitting beside Gen Z influencers wearing American flag sneakers. Some came hoping for policy, but most came for the theater. Trump was the headliner, and the show was about to begin. Backstage, organizers whispered nervously. There had been unconfirmed reports that a few unexpected guests might show. Security was quietly doubled, with plainclothes officers pacing near exits and watching the stage. They weren't taking chances. Then the house lights dimmed. An announcer's booming voice echoed like it was fight night in Vegas. Please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. He strolled onto the stage like a prizefighter returning for another round. One hand raised, smiling, as if the room, and maybe the country, still belonged to him. The applause thundered through the walls, but not everyone clapped. Near the back, someone cleared his throat loudly in protest. Another turned his back, but Trump ignored them. He approached the podium slowly, savoring the tension, basking in the spotlight. Within minutes, he was already in his usual rhythm, mocking Biden, throwing jabs at California's environmental policies, ridiculing electric cars. He hadn't even touched the summit's stated theme, state sovereignty and federal overreach, before the interruption began. A quiet stir rippled through the right side of the room. A figure stepped out from the press corridor, not from the main entrance, not from the guest seating, but from the side like a thread pulled loose from the edge of a suit. She wore a white blazer, tan heels, and a calm expression. Not a hint of hesitation. Just focus. Some people blinked. One woman near the front leaned over and gasped, "Is that?" It was Jasmine Crockett. The freshman congresswoman from Texas's 30th district had built a reputation for calling things exactly as she saw them. Her cross-examinations in committee hearings had gone viral more than once. She was bold, articulate, and made headlines on her own terms. But nobody expected her here. Not now, not unannounced. Trump caught sight of her almost immediately. His sentence broke in half. He leaned toward the mic and asked, half joking, half alarmed, "What's going on here? Did we invite her?" The crowd murmured. Security turned, moving toward her with deliberate urgency. But Crockett didn't move. She paused halfway down the aisle, confident, present, and entirely unbothered. She hadn't come to take a seat. She had come to say something. Trump adjusted his red stars and stripes tie, pointed toward the exit, and barked, "You don't belong here." Then, to the side stage crew, he said into the mic, "Someone take care of that. She's not supposed to be here." Security moved fast. Two men in black suits split from the wall, heading directly for her. Crockett didn't flinch. She lifted her hand. Not like a protester being arrested, but with the ease of someone asking for the floor. Calm, upright, hand slightly raised. "I just want 1 minute," she said. She wasn't shouting. She didn't have a microphone. But the room heard her. The crowd fell into silence. Trump's arm, mid-gesture, paused. His face tightened as if waiting for the next sound. Whispers rose, but no one yelled. No one booed. One woman nervously repositioned her phone camera. The moment had shifted, and everyone knew it. For a second it looked like security would keep coming. The men in black moved in, one pressing a finger to his earpiece, the other scanning the room for movement. But then Crockett spoke again, not to Trump, but to the crowd. "I was invited," she said. "Representative Ethan Bell couldn't make it, but he told me this was a place for open discussion. He asked me to observe. I showed up." Someone in the press pit called out, "Do you have proof of that?" She didn't answer him. She turned back to Trump. "You say you want open dialogue," she said. "Then give me just 60 seconds, just 1 minute, then I'll leave." The two security guards stopped. They were unsure now. Their training told them to wait for a signal. Their instinct told them this wasn't just another disruptor. Trump looked out at the audience, then back at her. He gave a tired half smirk. "This isn't your show," he said. "You weren't scheduled. You weren't cleared. You want 60 seconds? Start a podcast." A few chuckles rolled through the room, a smattering of applause, but no roar, no full-throated approval, just awkward claps and nods. Still, Crockett didn't blink. She didn't roll her eyes. She turned to face the room. "I'm not here to put on a show," she said. "I'm here because I still believe this country doesn't belong to one side. It belongs to all of us. Even the ones you don't agree with." That landed like a pin drop. Some cameras refocused, others began recording. Trump stepped back from the podium, frustrated, waving his hand. "I'm not playing into this," he muttered off mic. "Get her out." Security moved again, one step forward. But then a woman, mid-70s, gray hair, denim jacket, rose from her front row seat. "Let her speak," she said, soft, not forceful, like someone requesting to hear, not demanding it. Then another voice from the back. "Yeah, let her talk." Then a third. Not a roar, not a rebellion, but a quiet chorus, enough to stop everything, enough to break the rhythm. Trump squinted at the crowd. "You're seriously gonna let someone walk in here and hijack the stage?" he said. "We're calling that free speech now?" But it was too late. Too many phones were out. Too many people wanted to see what would happen next. People were filming. This wasn't a stage anymore. It had become a public moment. Finally, with visible reluctance, Trump waved his hand toward the mic. "All right, fine," he said. "You've got 1 minute. Go ahead. Say something smart." He stepped to the side. Security stopped. Crockett didn't rush the stage. She walked slowly, measured, toward the front, stopping a few feet from the steps. She didn't try to take the podium. Instead, she faced the crowd, clasping her hands. "I'm not going to talk policy," she began. "Not today. Because this isn't about policy anymore. It's about people, about how we talk to each other, about how we stop listening the moment we hear the other side's name." She took a breath, scanned the room. "I grew up 10 minutes from here, South Dallas. I used to ride the DART to school and pass this convention center every day. Never imagined I'd stand inside it, asking for the right to speak." Some leaned forward. Others froze, unsure of where this was heading. "I'm not here to convince you of anything," she continued. "I don't expect applause. I don't need agreement. I just want people to remember." She paused. "We're not enemies. We're not strangers. We're Americans. And if we can't tolerate one voice in the room that challenges us, then we've already lost more than just an election." Silence followed. Not awkward silence. Stillness. The kind that only follows truth. Even Trump didn't interrupt. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. Someone near the back muttered under their breath, but it didn't spread. No jeers. No applause. Crockett looked around one last time, gave a small nod. "That's all I wanted to say," and with that she stepped back. But the room wasn't ready to move on. The silence was heavy, not tense, just full. Like everyone was trying to process what had just happened. People blinked at each other, unsure whether to clap, challenge her, or just remain still. This wasn't how these events usually went. No one had screamed, no one had staged a protest. And yet, it cut deeper. Trump stayed to the side of the podium. His arms were still crossed, but his usual bravado was gone. He wasn't smirking or mugging for the cameras. He was watching, studying her. Crockett remained near the stage, not basking, not waiting for approval. She looked almost relieved, like saying what she said had been more about release than theater. Then, from the back corner, a slow clap, just 1 or 2 hands, hesitant, then a few more. It wasn't a standing ovation, not even close, but it was enough. Trump stepped forward, slicing through the moment. "All right," he said. "She had her say. That's America, folks, even when you don't want to hear it." His tone was half jab, half shrug, but even he knew the mood had shifted. This wasn't the dramatic clash people anticipated. No one got thrown out. No one shouted. And somehow, that hit harder than all the chaos people came expecting. Then, a voice from the middle row. A man in his late 40s, wearing a red golf shirt with a Texas flag stitched on the sleeve, stood up. "Congresswoman," he said loud and clear, "I don't agree with you on much, but you said that better than most ever have. Respect." She didn't smile, she just nodded once. Simple, clean. Trump blinked, caught off guard. He raised a brow and turned slightly toward the... "Well, aren't you full of surprises today?" Trump said with a quick laugh, a laugh that didn't quite land. And just like that, the energy began shifting back. The moderators on the side stage leaned into their earpieces, whispering to producers, unsure whether to resume the agenda or let the moment breathe. Reporters scrambled to upload clips. Social media was already spinning. Security, still stationed near the walls, finally eased their stance. No longer tracking a threat, just witnessing something they hadn't prepared for. Jasmine Crockett moved to the side and sat in an empty chair near the exit. She wasn't escorted out. No one blocked her path. She simply observed. Calm, collected, silent. Not smug, not rattled, just present. But attention still clung to her. A reporter leaned past the press rope and whispered to a congressional aide, "Is she making a statement afterward?" No answer. On stage, Trump fidgeted, for the first time all day. The spotlight had shifted away from him, and not because of a bold move he made, but because of something someone else said. In his house, on his time. He cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Well, I think we've all had our civics lesson for the day," he said. "Now can we get back to the part where we talk about actually fixing the country?" There were chuckles, applause, light but present. The crowd was trying to regain its rhythm, fall back into familiar cadence, but something was missing. Then, unexpectedly, a voice called out from the audience. Not yelling, not heckling, just asking, "Why don't you respond to what she said?" Gasps. Phones raised again, another wave of energy. Trump froze. He scanned the audience, trying to spot the speaker. But the voice had come from a crowd cluster. No one stood to claim it. His hands gripped the podium tighter. "I don't need to respond," he said at last, his voice clipped. "She's got her opinion. I've got mine. I was invited." A few claps, some laughs, but the applause wasn't whole. Then Crockett stood again. She didn't walk forward. She didn't raise her voice. She simply turned to the crowd from where she stood near the wall. "I didn't come here for attention," she said evenly. "But maybe, just maybe, some of you came here needing to hear something different." She paused. Not better, not perfect, just different. And with that she left. No cameras chased her, no security flanked her. She walked out the same way she came in, quiet, confident, and unshaken. Outside, the Texas sun had settled over the lot behind the convention center. Her phone buzzed 7 times in the last 3 minutes. No calls, just texts. A journalist, a staffer, 2 colleagues from the House, a cousin, all asking the same thing. What just happened? She didn't answer. Not yet. Her mind was still working through it all, even if her face revealed nothing. Back inside, the panel struggled to pick up the pieces. Trump launched into immigration, crime, blue states in chaos, but the rhythm was broken. It was like driving on a flat tire. Even applause felt off, slightly delayed, like the audience's minds were still somewhere else. Maybe still in that silence, when Crockett's words lingered. Because what hit hardest wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. No performance, no posturing, just truth. By the time Jasmine Crockett reached the lobby, talk of her entrance had already gone viral. People huddled near the escalators, replaying clips on their phones. Attendees who hadn't even been in the room were asking to see what had happened. It wasn't dramatic in the traditional sense, but it held weight, the kind of weight that lingers after an event ends. 2 hours later, the first grainy video hit Twitter. Shot from behind the press row on an old iPhone, it captured everything. Her entrance, Trump's reaction, her short speech, the man in the red golf shirt standing up. Within 10 minutes, the clip had over 12,000 likes. The comments came fast. Didn't expect to agree with Jasmine Crockett today, but wow, respect. This is how you change minds, not with noise, with clarity. Trump didn't know what to do. She had him standing there with his mouth half open. Was this planned? If so, it was genius. Texas just got interesting. By nightfall, cable news picked up the clip, not just the expected outlets, but all of them. One segment ran under the headline, Congresswoman Sparks' Unscripted Moment of Unity in Divided Room. Another called it an unexpected display of political courage. But not everyone praised her. Some far-right commentators accused her of being opportunistic, claiming she had staged the moment to boost her national profile before the midterms. One talk show host growled, "Come on, you don't just walk into a Trump event unless someone wants you to be seen." Still, something about that accusation didn't stick. Because if it had been staged, it would have felt louder, more forced, more calculated. It didn't. It felt like a person walking into a place she wasn't supposed to be, asking for a minute to be heard, and taking it without raising her voice. Back in her Dallas home that evening, Jasmine finally sat with her team around the kitchen table. "I didn't expect it to go like that," she admitted. "You didn't expect applause either," her aide replied. "But you got some." "I wasn't looking for applause," she said, rubbing her temples. "I just wanted them to look at me and see a human being, not a headline, not a threat." Her press manager, Reuben Sloan, a sharp-witted guy from Garland, scrolled through Twitter. "People are calling it a turning point," he said. "Even folks who hate politics are reposting it." Jasmine looked up, suddenly weary. "That's the saddest part," she said. "All I did was ask for 60 seconds without screaming, and now it's a national headline." Reuben paused. Maybe that's what people were waiting for, someone to not scream. But while her team worked to manage the online momentum, another story was quietly forming. Back at the convention center, the energy never quite returned to what it was before. A day that was supposed to celebrate political dominance had shifted into something more human. People didn't leave talking about tax plans or border policies. They talked about her, about the minute of silence, about the way the crowd looked when she said, "We're not enemies." What stuck most wasn't the applause. It was what followed. During a short break between panels, a group gathered quietly near the coffee station. A handful of attendees from different corners of the state, ranchers from Amarillo, retired teachers from Plano, 2 young veterans from El Paso. No one was yelling, no one was filming, they just talked. They were just talking. One of the vets, a guy named Jonah Krill, leaned against a column, arms crossed. "I'm a Trump guy," he said, "always have been, but she wasn't wrong. The way she carried herself, man, it got to me." The retired teacher beside him, Ruth Ashby, nodded slowly. "She reminded me of my sister," Ruth said. "Stubborn as anything, but kind, firm, just wants to be heard." Jonah shrugged. "I didn't agree with her, but I respected her." "Maybe that's where we start," Ruth replied. "Respect, not agreement." Nearby, a younger woman in a MAGA cap listened, but didn't speak. She looked unsure, like she didn't want to admit something out loud. But it was working on her too. Even in the main conference room, during the next panel, the undercurrent stayed alive. The moderators tried to steer the conversation back to economic development in Texas. But one of the speakers, State Senator Colin Greer, couldn't help himself. "I wasn't planning to address this," he said mid-discussion. "But I feel like, if we just move on like that moment didn't happen, we're pretending." He looked out across the audience. Congresswoman Crockett showed courage, whether you like her or not. And whether you like me or not, I think courage still matters in politics. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous, but it was real, honest. People weren't clapping out of habit. They were clapping because someone finally acknowledged the elephant in the room. Not long after, something else unexpected happened. Outside, in the vendor lot where food trucks were lined up, Crockett was making her way to her car. A small group of attendees stood near a taco truck. She could have kept her head down, could have ignored them. Instead, she paused when someone called her name. "Congresswoman!" She turned to see a man in a gray polo and Wrangler jeans jogging toward her. He looked unsure, like he wasn't certain if he'd be welcomed. "I just wanted to say, I didn't come here planning to listen to anyone from your side," he said, catching his breath. "But I did, and I'm glad I did." Jasmine studied him for a second, waiting. "My name's Kenton McBride. I run a roofing company in Temple. Voted red every election since I was old enough." He hesitated. "But what you said, it got to me," He stuck out his hand. She shook it. "You listened," she said. "That's more than most people try to do." Behind them, 2 more people wandered over, including the woman who had first said, "Let her speak." Her name was Teresa Givens, a grandmother, a former nurse, hadn't voted blue since Bill Clinton. "I just wanted you to know you weren't alone in there," Teresa said, smiling. "I didn't agree with all of it, but I was proud you showed up anyway." Jasmine's voice caught for a second. "Thank you," she said quietly. And maybe it was that stillness again, that strange, slow calm she carried, that made even critics lower their voices. But not everyone felt the same outside that building. Inside the private lounge backstage, Trump paced. He didn't like being caught off guard, and he especially didn't like losing control of a room he was supposed to dominate. "Who the hell cleared her?" he snapped, glaring at one of his aides. "She wasn't on the list. Not on the speaker roll. Not on anything." The aide, a younger guy with a nervous... One of Trump's aides, a young guy, jittery with nervous energy and a visible sweat stain darkening his collar, stammered, We think she entered under Representative Bell's credentials, sir. Technically, she was invited as a guest." "Technically?" Trump snapped. "You know who else gets in on a technicality? Hackers, criminals. I want names. Who signed off on this? Who thought this was a good idea?" He stopped pacing and turned toward a small monitor still replaying the moment. Jasmine's face was frozen mid-sentence. Calm, steady, no trace of fear. "She's too calm," Trump muttered. "You see that? Not even a tremble. That wasn't off the cuff. That was written, planned." The aide stayed quiet. "And what about the crowd?" Trump barked again. "Some of our own people clapped. What the hell was that?" "They were just reacting, sir. It caught everyone off guard." "Exactly," Trump snapped, grabbing a water bottle and taking a long swig, as if trying to cool off the pressure building inside. Alan Rensley, Trump's longtime advisor, known for saying things others tiptoed around, finally spoke. "Look," Alan said, "you didn't lose the crowd, but you didn't control it either." In that moment, it's everywhere now. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, people aren't even talking about your speech. They're talking about her. Trump scowled. "She's not the future," he growled. "She's noise." Alan shrugged. "Maybe. But noise spreads fast." Trump waved a dismissive hand, then slumped into the leather sofa, visibly annoyed. "She played it smart," Alan continued. "Didn't shout, didn't accuse, she just walked in like she belonged. And for 1 minute, she made everyone believe she did." There was a long pause, then Trump leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "She had the room," he admitted. "Just for a second. I'll give her that." Alan blinked. "You respect that?" Trump didn't answer directly. He just kept watching the monitor, now showing news coverage of the moment. "I respect strategy," he said flatly. "Doesn't mean I won't crush it." Outside that lounge, Trump's team scrambled to draft a statement. But they were stuck. Should they call it a stunt, label her a trespasser, or pretend it never happened and hope it would fade? But pretending wasn't really an option anymore. The clip had hit primetime hours ago. It aired on Newsline Weekly, Front Point Live, and was even dissected in a soft-spoken monologue on a conservative podcast that went viral. "She didn't flip the crowd," the host said, but she reminded them there's a difference between strength and volume. Trump's digital team tried redirecting attention to safer ground, economic wins, border updates, gas prices. But every third reply still showed a screenshot of Jasmine standing in that aisle, hand raised, expression composed. Trump's base wasn't abandoning him, not by a long shot. But they weren't aligned either. Some praised him for letting her speak, calling it a sign of confidence. Others criticized him for not shutting her down sooner. Still others wondered aloud, why didn't anyone challenge her right there on the spot? That fracture, those mixed signals, gnawed at Trump more than any speech ever could. Because Jasmine Crockett, whether she intended to or not, had done what few managed in recent years. She made him respond, not with rage, not through force, but by simply entering his domain, asking for 1 minute and using it. And it worked. The story spun in every direction imaginable. By the time the Texas sun dipped behind the skyline, Jasmine Crockett's name was trending in 4 major cities and counting. It wasn't just political circles talking. It had gone wide. Fast. People who had never watched a congressional hearing in their lives were quoting her 60-second speech on Instagram stories, TikToks, and Facebook posts. It reached corners that politics rarely touched. Fashion bloggers, fitness influencers, even a barbecue reviewer with a YouTube channel known for brisket tutorials. They were all sharing the clip with captions like, "This is how you speak in a room that wasn't built for you." One TikTok edit stood out. A user cut her speech over a slow, ambient instrumental beat. It ended with the voice of the man in the red golf shirt saying one word, respect. That version alone hit over 2 million views in 8 hours. But with all the praise came the backlash, just as fast, just as sharp. She staged it. Publicity stunt. She's grandstanding for cameras. A conservative talk show ran a fiery segment, the host leaning into the lens with a finger pointed like a warning. Wake up, people. That wasn't courage. That was theater. You think she walked in alone? Someone wanted that clip to go viral, and it did. The online mob followed. Anonymous accounts began digging into her voting record. Others attacked her appearance. A few even spread rumors that she had barged in or threatened staff. But none of it held water. Someone leaked internal event security footage. The video showed her walking through the front checkpoint like any other guest. Badge visible, no fuss, no confrontation. Calm. Methodical. Still, the public narrative split hard. News networks scrambled. Some tried inviting her on for interviews. Others debated whether giving her more airtime would validate what they called a breach of protocol. One panelist on a nightly broadcast put it bluntly, "This isn't bravery, it's performative activism, the most polished kind." But something unexpected followed. People outside of politics, nurses, delivery drivers, teachers began chiming in, and their tone was different, more personal, more honest. One Facebook post from a man named Brent out of Lubbock hit a nerve. "I was there," he wrote. "I voted Republican all my life, got a Trump sticker on my F-150, but when that woman spoke, something in me paused. Didn't agree with all of it, but I listened. Maybe we all need to shut up for a second and start listening again." The post went viral. Crockett saw it. She didn't comment, she just liked it. Back at her office, her team was scrambling. Her inbox was flooded with invitations, podcasts, interview requests, speaking gigs. Some were sincere, others were clearly bait. And then of course came the threats. Enough of them that the Capitol Police quietly stepped in. Ruben, her press manager, started keeping a folder labeled "just in case," but Jasmine didn't react publicly. No rant on social media, no cable news tour, just a single statement from her office. "I asked for 60 seconds in a room where I wasn't expected. I spoke. That's all. The rest is noise." And that silence, it kept people talking. Late night shows cracked jokes. One host said, "Crockett walked into a Trump rally with more calm than a yoga instructor on chamomile, and she's the threat?" Big laugh, but it carried weight. Because for once, people didn't know how to label what had happened. She didn't yell, she didn't accuse, she didn't even stay to take questions. She asked for 1 minute, and now, whether she meant to or not, she had become a symbol of something much bigger. But inside political offices across the country, the real question wasn't how the public felt. It was how the party machines would respond. On the second floor of a modest office building in Arlington, the fluorescent lights burned well into the night. The Democratic Regional Caucus team had been locked in a meeting for hours. Phones were silenced. Coffee had gone cold. Laptops flickered across the table. Jasmine Crockett's name came up every 5 minutes, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with concern. "She's got guts," said Miriam Noland, a senior strategist who had worked 3 presidential campaigns. "But let's not kid ourselves. This just put a target on her back." Across from her, Dev Patel, a party organizer with a knack for digital strategy, leaned forward. "Yeah, but what if that target turns into a spotlight?" he asked. "People are watching. Independents, even moderate conservatives. We'd be stupid not to harness that momentum." "Sure," Miriam replied, "but that assumes she wants to be part of something bigger. She hasn't returned a single call from National yet." "She will," Dev said. "She just lit a match in the middle of a thunderstorm. She's probably still figuring out how loud the thunder is." Meanwhile, a few hundred miles east in a quiet office in Tulsa, another group was having a very different conversation. The GOP's regional media coordination team sat tense and agitated, surrounded by clips, social media reactions, and polling data that made their heads throb. "She made him look flat-footed," said Julian Cross, a communications advisor known for spinning hardline narratives. We can't afford that twice. She was invited, another staffer muttered, by a Republican, no less. And that's the part we bury, Julian snapped. We don't give that an inch of oxygen. As far as our base is concerned, she walked in off the street. But she didn't, the staffer replied. There's clear footage of her entering with a guest badge. Truth doesn't trend, Julian said coldly. Emotion does. Back in Dallas, Jasmine sat alone in her living room, still dressed in the same white blazer she'd worn to the summit. A cup of tea rested untouched on the coffee table. Her phone kept lighting up with texts and calls she wasn't ready to answer. She glanced down at one voicemail transcription from her mother. You did good, baby. Don't let them twist it. You spoke like a woman raised right. A faint smile crept across her lips, but even that moment didn't last. A knock on the door pulled her back to the present. It was Ruben. He stepped inside, sat down without asking, and opened his laptop. We need to talk about the invites, he said. There's a town hall in Oklahoma that wants you next week. PBS wants a one-on-one. And, believe it or not, Fox wants to do a segment. She didn't answer right away. I didn't do it for this, she said quietly. I just couldn't sit through another one-sided speech about what real Americans want. Like I wasn't one. Ruben nodded. And you didn't scream to prove it, that's why it worked. They sat in silence for a moment. Do you regret it? He finally asked. Jasmine took a breath. I regret that it felt rare. I regret that telling the truth quietly is considered radical now. Upstairs, a faint buzzing came from her guest room. Her niece was staying over, asleep with the TV still playing. On screen, they were replaying the clip for the 4th time in 20 minutes. The anchor's voice carried softly through the walls. Unusual calm, a rare political moment, one that left the crowd, and even the former president couldn't come up with a quick response. Somewhere in Washington, a campaign manager scribbled new ideas for an ad. Somewhere in Florida, a major donor quietly pulled funding from a candidate who had applauded her. And in a dozen political circles across the country, one question floated quietly beneath the surface. If 1 minute of clarity could shake a room like that, what would 5 do? But while strategists and pundits circled the moment like vultures, Jasmine Crockett had already shifted focus. She was looking ahead, to what came after the moment. 2 mornings later, she sat tucked in the corner of a small cafe in Oak Cliff, hood pulled halfway over her head. She was hoping for a quiet hour. 1 hour before the calls, before the media swirl, before 1,000 interpretations tried to define her. But silence rarely lasts when the country decides you've become a symbol. A barista spotted her first, nodded without saying a word. Then a young woman in blue scrubs walked in, paused at the counter, then slowly approached her table. Are you, the woman stammered. Jasmine looked up, her eyes tired but kind. I am, she said gently. The woman smiled, eyes misty. I watched your clip 3 times yesterday. My dad's a trucker, lifelong Trump voter. But after hearing what you said, he just got quiet. Then he said, she's got guts, reminds me of your grandma. Jasmine blinked, surprised. The woman slid a folded paper across the table. He doesn't do social media, so he asked me to write something for you. She walked away before Jasmine could respond. Jasmine unfolded the note. It read, I don't agree with you, but I'd listen to you. That's more than I can say for most. That afternoon, she sat down with local journalist Shelby Dunn, veteran of Texas politics, more interested in truth than sound bites. I've been in a lot of rooms like that, Shelby said, placing her recorder on the table. But I've never seen one stop the way it did when you spoke. Jasmine thought before answering. I wasn't trying to stop anything, she said. I just wanted to show up and say what I never hear at these events, that it's okay to disagree without assuming hate. Shelby raised an eyebrow. Were you scared? Jasmine looked away, briefly. I was aware, she said slowly, of the risk, of how it might be seen, of the fact that I was standing alone, but scared? Not really. She paused, smiled slightly. I've been in far smaller rooms with far louder men. Then she added softer. What scared me more was staying silent, letting that moment pass and doing nothing. The conversation shifted. Do you think people would have reacted the same if you had shouted? If you'd gone on the offensive? No, Jasmine said firmly. They would have shut down. That room wasn't built to hold my anger. It barely held my presence. She took a breath. But when I came in without swinging, they had to choose. Listen or leave. Most stayed. Shelby leaned back. So what now? Jasmine exhaled slowly. I don't want to be a moment, she said. I want this to begin something. If people walk away thinking, maybe I should listen before I assume, then that's enough for me. Across the country, more messages came in, and somewhere in Nebraska, a small school in Arizona asked if she could record a message for their civics class. A group of veterans in Ohio posted a video thanking her for showing restraint when she could have chosen confrontation. But the critics didn't stop. She's just another media puppet. She's selling calm like it's a brand. She walked into a lion's den and acted like it was brunch. Still, Jasmine didn't flinch because something had shifted. And not just for her. At kitchen tables in barber shops, union halls, and gas station counters, the conversation had changed. People weren't asking whose side she was on. They were asking why it felt so rare to hear someone speak like that. Maybe that was the bigger story. Not her bravery, not her politics. But the fact that we'd all grown so used to shouting that quiet suddenly felt brave. And even Jasmine knew. The moment wouldn't last unless someone carried it forward. 3 weeks later, the headlines had moved on. The story was no longer front-page news. A few interviews aired, a couple op-eds made the rounds. Political panels squeezed out one last hot take before chasing the next scandal. But something lingered from that Dallas ballroom, quietly, persistently. Not because it was loud, because it was different. In church basements and city council meetings, it came up unprompted. A pastor in Topeka referenced it in a sermon about humility. A debate teacher in Fresno asked her students, what made the room stop when she spoke? Was it the message, or how she said it? In a diner in Lafayette, Louisiana, a retired mechanic named Howard McClure stirred his coffee and told his buddies, that woman didn't even raise her voice, but half the room sat up straighter. I can't stop thinking about that. At a time when volume often trumps value, Crockett had done something rare. She cut through the noise without playing the game. And still, she wasn't celebrating. She was back in her district, walking streets with cracked sidewalks and overgrown lawns where every yard had a story. Meeting teachers, hosting a listening session at the rec center, talking with small business owners still struggling to recover from pandemic losses. Her team begged her to ride the momentum, national press, primetime platforms, fundraisers galore. But she shook her head. Let them know I'm still here, she told Rubin. I didn't turn into a headline. I'm still a neighbor. It would have been easy to chase fame, to grab speaking tours and soak up attention. But she knew better. The country didn't need another viral moment. It needed depth. It needed examples, not perfect ones, just real ones. And though she never said it aloud, Jasmine understood what now rested on her shoulders. Once you show people a different way to be heard, they start expecting more. Not just from you, but from everyone. Still, the pushback never really stopped. Pundits accused her of watering down her message to win centrist approval. Party insiders whispered that she'd gone off-brand. One high-ranking official even told her bluntly, "You're a Democrat. You're supposed to fight fire with fire." But that wasn't the lesson she took from Dallas, because that room taught her something she always believed, but rarely saw proven. People don't always need a hero. Sometimes they just need a pause, a window, a second to reconsider. And more often than not, that second only arrives when the shouting stops, long enough for a voice like hers to break through. In her final interview before going quiet again, a young reporter asked, "What do you want people to remember about that day?" Jasmine sat with the question for a long time. "I want them to remember what it felt like when nobody was yelling," she said. "I want them to remember that just for a minute, a room full of people who didn't agree on much still listened to each other." The reporter nodded. "And what would you say to someone who feels like speaking up isn't worth the risk?" Jasmine looked right into the camera. "I'd say silence is a risk too. And the longer we pretend that only the loudest voices matter, the more we lose the people who actually have something worth saying." Outside the studio, her car waited in the lot, engine running. Another meeting, another neighborhood, another face at the door with questions she couldn't answer in sound bites. But she was ready, because this wasn't about viral clips or strategy boards. It was about showing up every time, even in rooms where the odds weren't in your favor. Especially then, she opened the door, took a breath, and stepped out into the noise again, willing to risk everything for just one more quiet moment. And maybe that's the message we all needed. Not to be louder, but to make our words matter more. If this story moved you, even just a little, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes one voice, spoken calmly at the right moment, can shift everything.